Welcome to Wilder. Today, we got a little special event going on. In celebration of the feedback I've been receiving on my most recent film, I wanted to take a deeper dive into the story around Ghost on the Mountains film and give it a little more justice. There was a decent amount of questions and messages I received about how I actually attempted to pull off a stunt this crazy, and I'll explain that during this live stream. And there was also some interesting things that happened that weren't included in the video, like an almost life-threatening encounter with a mountain lion. And to wrap up, I'll of course be explaining the tragic ending to the video and what happened there with the fall, as so many people have had questions about the details of what actually happened. This is a live stream conversation, so that means it's meant to be interactive, and this will be half as fun without your guys' involvement. So please comment or ask questions as we go. As you're thinking about your first questions to come, let me tell you a little bit more about the background of these birds and what kind of made them so intriguing and special to me in the first place. And feel free to give me a message in the chat to let me know that you're there. So, as most people probably gathered from the video, I think this was pretty clear, but Himalayan Snowcock are not native to the United States. They were introduced from Pakistan between 1963 is when it started, and I think 1979 was the last year that they were introduced. And they were introduced around a few mountain ranges in the United States, actually. But the only mountain range that they wound up being able to adapt to and survive in was the Ruby Mountains. And they were brought in originally as game birds. They were brought in to be hunted. And that's why a lot of people have questions like, why are these birds hunted if they're so rare? It's because they were brought in as game birds. That's why they were originally here. And that's kind of, I guess, the reason why they're still hunted to this day, even with how rare they are in the US. In the Himalayas, their populations and numbers are completely different. I don't know much about that, but that's kind of the reason why they are here in the first place. A few fun and kind of interesting things about them is that so they kind of follow the snow line in the Ruby Mountains as every year goes by. So as the snow line recedes up the mountain, then you wind up seeing the snowcock move higher and higher and higher as the summer goes on. And then as the winter comes, they kind of move lower down through the mountain because they're really foraging through those grasses and sedges. And so they need that open ground to really get to the food that they want. But also, they naturally are adapted to live at those higher altitudes. There's less predators up there, all of that good stuff. So they're trying to kind of push that snow line as it goes. So what that means is that in the winters, they can be seen as low as about 8,500 feet in elevation in the Ruby Mountains. That's about the lowest point they will ever be spotted. But as the summers go on, they wind up going to the tops of those peaks. And so they wind up pushing to 11,000 plus. And so there's a really hard sweet spot where you want to try to find them as low as possible in the Ruby Mountains because it takes so much less effort, right, than getting to the tops of those peaks. However, at the same time, the canyon road that accesses the whole canyon is closed up to certain extents during the winter. So maybe the whole canyon will be closed at the worst part of winter. As winter starts, the snow starts to melt. As the spring comes, they'll open up a little bit into the canyon and so on and so forth. So it's kind of a trade-off where you have to find the right moment where you can have the closest distance almost from parked car to the birds in order to try to capture them. So just some little fun facts there. Again, if you guys are just joining, let me know in the chat that you guys are here and around. Actually, let me pull up really quick, make sure that all of this is functioning properly. Because I have had that happen before. Okay. Cool. All right. So we'll keep pushing through until we have questions from you guys. Yeah. All right. So Yeah, some of my initial intrigue to capture this bird, and what kind of captured my imagination about it so many years ago. I think the first time that I ever kind of found out about it was the Big Year movie. If you guys have ever seen that movie, with Jack Black, Steve Martin, and Owen Wilson. And in that movie, they're trying to do that famous big year in America, and one of the hardest birds that they decide to try to go after is the Himalayan Snowcock. So for people who are actually doing a big year here in the United States, there's you're trying to check off as many birds as you can. There's some that are going to be way harder than others, and the Himalayan Snowcock is typically known to be so difficult that some birders that are ambitious enough will actually pay a helicopter to fly over the mountains just to spot it from above. So that kind of gives you an idea of how difficult this bird is generally considered to be found. And so that's kind of where that started. But then beyond that, I had back in when I first got into birding in the United States, I had a National Geographic's like their field guide to North American birds. And in there, I would look through all the range maps, and I noticed that there was one, the Himalayan Snowcock, that was just a tiny speck on the United States map. And for that, I was like, whoa, that's crazy. That it literally is only in this one little spot. It kind of listed some details on it, and it just intrigued me a lot, just how difficult that would be to find. And the other factor that comes into play is that I'm actually familiar with the Ruby Mountains because my grandparents had a second home there. As I grew up, so I visited those Ruby Mountains occasionally. So I was already familiar with the area. I knew how beautiful it was. I knew how kind of underrepresented it is because it's hardly traveled for how beautiful that mountain range is. And so, those were a lot of the factors that kind of pulled me into wanting to photograph this bird. So, some reasons why it's so difficult to capture this bird. Come down to a couple different things. I would say three things mainly. Number one comes down to accessibility. As we've been talking about, there's only one road up the canyon. You basically have to hike off that road, and there's no trails to get to the spots where the Himalayan Snowcock are really known to be, or at least known to be, and having a decent chance to photograph them. So that's one of the reasons why they're so difficult in the first place, is the accessibility. Second reason is the rarity of them. There's about 300 of them in population around the Ruby Mountains. So you have this huge mountain range, or a decent sized mountain range, I should say, and these huge alpine peaks, and you're looking for one of 300 of these birds. And the third reason, which really possibly could even be the biggest factor to consider, that and accessibility, I'd say. The third reason is skittishness. They are incredibly skittish. I mean, they're known to be like, you see them and they're gone. They jump off the canyon face. So that's part of their defense too. That's their defensive strategy, is that they kind of walk along these cliff faces and kind of forage in these areas where they can very quickly, they know they can make an escape at any moment's notice. So if they wind up noticing you and you're just a little bit too close, which their boundary for what is too close is quite far away actually. If they notice you, they will just jump right off the cliff. They'll flush right off the cliff, and there goes your chances of ever getting a photograph. very difficult birds. And most of my references, unfortunately, are to hunting. It's not to bird photography, but that is where people have the most experience with these birds. For hunters, they're even known to be so hard because, hunting in the first place, you don't have to be as close as you do for a good photo. So there's those factors that make it even easier than a photo, which hunting these birds is not easy either from what I've heard. But even at that, hunters are often like trying to make sure that they could spot that bird before that bird spots them, because when they take their shot, if they take the shot and the bird's already flying off the cliff, the bird's going to get shot in the air, fall down the cliff. It's going to be unretrievable, which essentially makes the hunt either unethical or something like that. So even for hunters, it's known to be quite a difficult challenge because of that skittishness. So but yeah, so got that going on. And then let's see what's next. So talk a little bit about the research that was done leading up to the trip. But first, let's see, we got to chat pop up here. I don't know why it's chopping off the second part of the chat right there. Okay. I had a feeling this wasn't going to be working. Give me one moment. If you're watching this back, just skip 30 seconds forward. Okay, let's see. So what are some lessons, plans, ideas when you go back for the picture? So yeah, good question. I'll talk about how I kind of research and plan this out first, and then I'll talk about what I would change going back in the future. So the research for this initially started about 5 years ago. So back when COVID, right before COVID hit, and before I knew that all that was coming, I had been prepping to do a trip actually to find this Himalayan Snowcock in 2020. So the beginning of 2020, I'm doing all this research, I'm doing all this prep. I know this is going to be a difficult bird, and I get in contact through all my research with really the only person who's known to really know these snowcock well in these mountains. Like this guy, his name is Bill Homan, and he knows everything about these Himalayan snowcock. He spends his days up in the mountain, backpacking, hiking everywhere. He's obsessed with the wildlife there. And the Himalayan snowcock is one of those wildlife subjects that he's absolutely obsessed with. So getting to know him, I start to ask him questions. How can I, get access to this bird? Where do I find it? What are my best chances of photographing it? When and where? What season? All of that. So I start to do all that research. And then my plan is to go middle of April. And as you guys might remember, 2020, middle of March comes, and the whole world goes into lockdown. And at the time, no one really knows what that means. So at the time, I was skeptical if I crossed state borders, because I live in California, that I would be able to come back. So because of that, I cancel my plans, and it gets put on hold for the moment. So the years go by. The next year I was hoping to be able to do it, but at the time still didn't know about all of the lockdown situation and how that looked, because there was a resurgence that they were telling us was coming back in spring and blah, blah, blah. So didn't go that year, 2021. And then it kind of just fell off my radar for 2022, 2023. Started to come back on my radar in 2024, but as a lot of you know, wound up taking a trip to go see the puffins in Norway. So that kind of took a little bit of precedence there. But finally this year I was like, this is going to be the year I got to do this. I've been waiting too long on this. So got back into it. And really what the plan and the preparation for that looks like is I would ask Bill a lot of questions. So he was a huge resource on that. But I would also try to figure out, okay, which ways can I get up to the mountain to the spots that he is suggesting that I photograph them at? And he would give me different ideas. Like he would give me ideas of like, this spot is much harder to find the birds, but you're more likely to get a good shot if you do find them here, and so on and so forth, versus other places. So that was a lot of the research there. Did lots of research on how the subject moves, like kind of what its maybe skittishness is, like what is it skittish to. I did a lot of research on like the types of food that it feeds on, things like that. And even for down to the camo gear that I wore, that was kind of coordinated with Bill, as Bill, who has the most experience once again with them, said it's virtually impossible unless you wind up using camo gear. So through all of his experience, I trusted that, kind of went with some camouflage that he recommended there. So yeah, that's kind of was some of the process of, I guess, planning that out. Now, in terms of things that I would change, one thing that I would definitely change is I went in thinking that there was, I guess, Bill gave me about a 70% chance of me finding the birds. And I think I thought that was high enough at the time to be able to just start getting to those locations pretty much right after day one, and find the bird and then start figuring out my photographic angles. But now after doing it, I realized that really, like, I don't know if 70%, maybe it's accurate, but it might not be accurate enough to where I could just trust that and go and trust that it's going to be at one of the most highly recommended spots. So what I did on my day 3 of my film, if you wind up watching that, is that on day 3, I wound up kind of resetting and just going back down through the canyon and driving around and finding them via audio and via visuals, and not worrying about getting the photo that day, not worrying about getting close to them, but just simply locating them around the canyon. And if I were to go back, because I wasted so much time on day 1 and 2 just hiking and not finding anything, I would start off with that. As much as it kind of feels almost like unproductive to know that you're doing a day where it's simply to spot them and figure out where they are in the mountains and not having any chance of getting a photograph that day, it feels unproductive. But at the end of things, I would have saved those 2 days in time originally, and that 3rd day would have been my first day, right? So that would be one huge thing that I would change, is start off with that rather than trying to take my chances and just winding up being unsuccessful anyways. Another thing that I would, I guess something that I wouldn't necessarily change in my plans, but would be more refined, is that I would, now that I know a lot of different routes up the mountain to different possible locations that they are, I wouldn't need to spend so much time getting up on rocks, launching my drone, figuring out my route, backtracking, moving to the side, moving around, all that good stuff. Because I spent a lot of time just figuring out how to get around these steep cliffs. And if I would have just known that off the bat, I wouldn't have had to take so much time to scout those routes and kind of go off track to figure out how I'm going to get up from point A to point B as well. So that would save me a lot of time in the future. And that's something that just takes a lot of experience, I guess, at that location and knowledge. So that would be one big thing. And then, yeah, I think that, yeah, those are some of the biggest things that I would say that I would have changed. So, yeah, some actually, I guess some fun side information on that too, on that scouting day. So I guess we'll kind of move into some little kind of bonuses that weren't included in the video, or these are kind of things that were behind the scenes you don't see in the video really at all, actually. Because when I'm crafting a story, I want to craft a story that is very focused, very direct, kind of is not... There's elements that I could always include in a story that would be cool, where maybe cool things that would happen, but sometimes they just pull away from the main storyline that you're trying to drive home the point with, or try to drive home kind of the main conflict or the event that's going on, or the main feature of the film. And one of those things was the moment where I spotted the snowcock visually was the only moment that I got to see one with my eyes, and that was confirmed. And that was very visual on screen, and it was the first one that I got to spot, so I felt like that was the right one to show. But I actually did hear 2 other snowcock further up the canyon. I didn't include them in the video because I felt like it just felt natural to get from, it just felt like it was too much explaining, and I just wanted to keep it focused down. But I did hear 2 other ones further up the canyon, never spotted those. And also where I heard them, it was hard to say because, again, I didn't spot visually where they were on the cliffs above me, but they seemed to be even more inaccessible than the first one. So I didn't include those in the video, but man, did they have an amazing call too. So that was pretty cool to hear, and I enjoyed that. Again, if you're just joining us, feel free to drop any comments in the chat or questions in the chat. So yeah, that was a little bit of that. And we'll get to the camera fall in a second too. But yeah, I would say one other big thing was how close I got with the bighorn sheep herd. So that was a pretty cool moment. And sometimes it's hard doing things publicly because sometimes people don't understand the fullness of the situations. And to be honest, I was expecting almost like a little bit of backlash from someone about like, you shouldn't have been that close to them, so on and so forth. And there are situations where we, as wildlife photographers, we do have to be careful about that. But in that situation, I was reading them the whole time. I was very like kind of in touch with how they were acting and all that stuff. And there was one point where they started to get so close to me. I did not approach them at all. So that whole video, how close you see that they are to me, that was them pushing their way to me. And so rather than like getting up and trying to run away or move back too fast or things like that, it's almost just better to just stay where you are. That keeps them more calm as well. So I did slowly backpedal as they started to get really close to me. But there was even one moment where I could see that one of them was wanting to go right through where I was. So at that moment, and that moment wasn't included on camera, but I actually got up and I moved off to the side and let it pass through. So there's even moments like that where you see that. But I am glad that no one kind of mistook that and thought that I was, kind of being too intrusive on their area. But man, was that an incredible moment. Like, I've never, ever gotten that close to a wild mammal before. And they literally at some points got within about 15 feet away from me, which was incredible. But yeah, they were just incredibly bold, and that was a really fun moment. Now, I guess one other really fun thing to talk about was that was not included, was I had what I thought to be a mountain lion encounter on the side of that mountain in the Rubies. And that was pretty scary because for a moment I really believed it was a mountain lion, and keyword there is believed. So as you saw in the video, we were hiking up at nighttime every morning. And one of the sucky things was after I dropped my gear, so kind of funny little side note. After I dropped my gear, that was day 3, I had not taken any thumbnail photos by then. And I knew I needed to take a thumbnail photo for the video, or a couple of them with the visions that I had for how I was going to craft that thumbnail. So day 4, I actually had to go back and re-hike up that mountain to some spots that I had previously kind of decided on, that I was just planning on getting on a future day when we happen to be in that area anyways. But I had to re-hike up the mountain just for those photos. Like, it felt like such a pointless hike, but had to do it to get the photos that I needed for the thumbnail. And so, and I wanted to get there those early morning hours so I can capture the lighting properly and stuff like that. So we hiked up in the dark again on day 4 after the whole video is already filmed and done, which sucked. But hike up that mountain. And as we're hiking up that mountain, all of a sudden my brother, who was the 1 second shooting this whole video for me, he sees a pair of two eyes just staring at us in the dark right up the hill. And he was like, hey, do you see that? And I was like, oh my goodness. And the way that the eyes were set made it look like it was 2 front-facing eyes, which in the Ruby Mountains means that it's mountain lions, if that was to be the case. And it really looked like that in the dark. So we both started went into high alert, and we did not move forward. What my brother did, he pulled out his tack flashlight that he had on him, and we just kept a spot basically on him the whole time. And one of us would hold the flashlight, keep the spot on the eyes, the other one would move back a couple steps, then we'd switch, the other one would keep the flashlight, the other one would move back a few steps, because we're on this steep slope, so we have to look behind us as we're kind of moving back down the mountain. So that was a pretty intense moment, thinking that we actually did have a mountain lion that was possibly pursuing us in that moment. But as the sun started to come up, we kind of worked our way back down the mountain to what was a safer range. And then eventually as the sun started to come back up, and we got enough light on the subject, we realized it was actually a deer and a second deer off to the side. But man, in the dark, those eyes looked like they were front set. So we really thought we were running across a mountain lion in the moment. That was a pretty good scare that we had in that moment. So, yeah. But so that was kind of that encounter. And, yeah, that definitely does happen sometimes, Klaus. Yeah, I've wanted to have an encounter with a fox family for so long, but still have not been lucky with them. And I actually have options crazy enough in Fresno, in the city, but it just never feels, I don't know, never feels the same doing it in the city. But maybe someday I'll make a video out of it and attempt that. But those of you guys who are just joining, feel free to ask any questions that you have about the experience that I had or the film, and I'd be happy to answer them. Already worked through quite a lot of comments on it. But one other kind of bonus behind the scenes that was not shown in the video, I mentioned it for a brief moment verbally in the outro, but The amount of ticks that I got on this trip was insane. Because we're hiking through backcountry where there's no trails once again, right? And the environment for them is just, it's perfect there. It's drier mountains. It's a lot of brush. And I mean, the mountains is primarily, I would say, like it's dominated by rodents and mammals, like furry creatures that have, some thickness to them. Ticks can latch onto that. So every day, my brother and I were pulling ticks off of ourselves. It was just, it was insane the amount of ticks we got, but got a lot of ticks throughout the trip, which was another kind of fun bonus to take home with us in it. But yeah, so I think by the end of it, I probably wound up with about 15 to 20 ticks. Not all of which latched, but at least found about 15 to 20 ticks on me. And definitely a good amount of them were latched. So yeah, it was kind of crazy. If anyone has any questions, we've worked through pretty much most of what I felt like was interesting to talk about, except for the camera drop, which we'll talk about last in a second. Talking about how that happened, because there were lots of questions on how exactly that happened and all that good stuff. But if anyone has any questions before we dive into that, feel free to throw them in the chat now. I'll give us a few seconds to go with that. Klaus, I see your question there. How do you choose the animal you want to photograph? That's a good question. Really, whatever intrigues me, and why something intrigues me can change so much between subjects. So the snowcock, I think, mostly intrigued me because of how difficult this bird is to capture. And part of the reason why I do wildlife photography is I love the challenge of it. I love the challenge and kind of pushing myself to get a better photo, or push myself to do something. In this case, this is my first attempt at something this crazy, but trying to do something that hadn't been done before. So that was kind of my reasoning for photographing or wanting to photograph the snowcock. But with other animals like the puffins, for example, last year, it's just a bird that I've always thought is a fascinating and amazing bird, whether that's down to the behaviors of how they kind of nest in dens on the side of sea cliffs and these huge colonies, or whether that's just even the way that they look and those super beautiful, intriguing bills that can stuff 10 plus fish inside them. So I think that the reason for each subject that I choose to photograph can vary a lot. But ultimately, I usually choose things that intrigue me on a much deeper level. So I don't do a ton of wildlife photography of things that I feel like are ordinary. And that's not the right way to say it either, because really all of nature is special and unique. But the things that maybe are easier for me or very common for me specifically, I don't wind up revisiting them too much, in all honesty. But yeah. So highlights from Garrett. Highlights from the trip. Oh man, that's a good question. I would say that highlights from the trip that stand out to me the most. I mean, spotting that snowcock, I hope I represented that well in the film, but spotting that snowcock up on that cliff for the first time was incredible. Like the way that my heart started racing was just, it felt surreal, because it felt like something that I had been wanting to see for 5 years, and I finally got my moment of it. And it wasn't even a good moment. It was so far away, but it just felt like it was such a representation of how difficult this challenge was that I was trying to pursue at that moment. So I would say that was a huge highlight for me. Was just getting to see it in the first place. Made me really happy. Another huge highlight was just, honestly, I love being out in nature where it feels like you are out in nature, where you're not on a trail, where you're not like on some route that someone's planned for you. You're not around other people. Like, I live close to Yosemite. Yosemite is fantastic. It's so beautiful, but the biggest downside to it is that there is people everywhere, and it doesn't feel like you're out in nature. So I love Yosemite for photographs because it's beautiful to photograph, but it doesn't quite feel to me like I'm out in nature, like truly being kind of present in nature. Same thing with like Yellowstone when I went there. Like it's amazing for photographs, so beautiful, but it doesn't make me feel like I'm out in nature. So that was probably one of my other favorite things, was in the Ruby Mountains, you truly are alone. Like on all my hiking, never bumped into a single person the whole time. I bumped into, I think, 2 people at my parked car throughout the whole time. That's probably about it. Or I guess 2 different cars of people. So it really truly feels like you're out in nature there. And that was probably one of my other favorite parts. And then, yeah, I would say, yeah, probably those are the biggest things that stand out to me. And then also the bighorn sheep moment. That was pretty surreal getting to have that moment because, yeah, not only was I just thrilled by the photographs I got from it, but just getting to see that herd and get so up and close and personal with them was quite amazing too. So yeah, that was that. And yeah, thanks for that comment, Terrell. If I'm pronouncing your name properly. Yeah, I don't have too much experience with ticks. So yeah, I haven't had to hike in places where ticks are very abundant. Like, cause in the Sierras where I hike mostly, or in the coastal mountain range of California, like they aren't super abundant. I've never ever gotten more than I think 1 on me. And really hasn't been too much of a bother. But yeah, I will keep that in mind for the future. So appreciate that. And, do I have a priority list? Asked Klaus. I mean, the snowcock is definitely top of my priority list now. I am 99% sure that I will be back next year to photograph it. And, yeah, there are some other ones that are pretty high up on the list. Trying to think of what probably is highest up on the list, but, yeah, I do plan, on, I guess, yeah, I guess we'll leave that for you guys to find out in the future, but we'll just say the snowcock is top of the list right now. So yeah. Yeah. Any last questions before we dive into the camera drop? Feel free to throw them in now. Give a few seconds for you guys to do that if you are wanting to. Okay. All right. So now the camera drop, how that wound up happening. So that was pretty crazy. And I did a good job of keeping it secret too until everyone watched the film. So everything in me wanted to just like post about it that day and be like, look at what happened. But I felt like it would just make for a good kind of twist and conclusion in the story, because ultimately it's a big bummer that I wasn't able to get the photograph that I set out for. But I felt like we still needed some sort of a wrap up, some sort of a way that really drove the whole idea of the story home, which the idea of the story to me, it's like almost like a man versus nature, and like the having to like work through the strifes of that difficulty to capture that bird, and that kind of triumph. And so that was kind of supposed to be the whole theme of the video, and having that so abruptly kind of be stripped away and taken away from me was a way that I could best represent with what I was able to get, which was not capturing the snowcock photo. That was a way that I was best able to represent the difficulty and the insanity almost of this challenge. And so saving that for the video and not cueing anyone in about it beforehand, or not giving any sneak peeks about that in the video, I feel like when you get to that point in the video and it happens, you're almost in disbelief. Like it's almost like something got stolen from you, something got stripped from you. And that's really what I wanted to represent with it. So I was happy with the way that kind of turned out. But in regards to, I guess, like how that happened in the moment. So ironically, that was on our 3rd day, right? I had spotted the snowcock that morning, had this incredible moment with the bighorn sheep. So afterwards, with my brother, who was my second shooter, I was like, okay, so we know where the snowcock is. We need to figure out how to get up this mountain. So we're going to spend the rest of today scouting out the trip, or scouting out the route to get up to that cliff. So basically what we started doing was hiking up what I think was going to be a good route for this. So we're hiking up, I launch a drone, I figure out more of the route. We hike up some more, I launch the drone again, figure out some more of the route. there's an outcrop of rocks. It started to get really steep at one point. Like, I mean, it was brutally steep. I would say like a 30-degree to 40-degree incline. Like, it was steeper than I've ever hiked on a raw, like, mountain slope before without a trail and without steps. So it was getting really steep, and my brother was actually getting over a sickness on this whole trip. So for day 1, 2, and 3, like, he's slowly getting better, but he has like some decent congestion in his lungs. So at this point, it's midday. We're not going to see a snowcock, and I'm looking up. I'm not seeing any, like, you know, mountain goat or bighorn sheep around, anything like that. I'm thinking about his energy, wanting to conserve his energy. So I'm like, hey, you stay here. I'm going to hike up it wound up taking about an hour. I thought it was going to take about 30 minutes, but I wound up hiking about another hour onto the top of that outcrop so I could do one final launch with my drone, and then we'll call it a day so I could use that drone to scout out that last part of the route that we were going to have to hike the following morning. Then we'll call it a day. I'll come back down. You don't even have to worry about filming it because I'm not going to capture anything really good there. So I wind up getting on that outcrop, launch my drone, capture a little bit of B-roll as you guys saw in the video, figure out the route that I'm going to plan out for it. And as I'm coming back down, there's this one slope that I had to get up to get onto the outcrop where it's like kind of like a slippery granite rock slope that has, you know, dirt and like tiny little pebbles on it a little bit. And then at the end of that, like kind of shallow incline or decline in this case, it goes to a cliff where it actually kind of drops off. And the way that I made through it was there was this one little crack where it's almost like a crevice where you can kind of like through kind of pressure on the sides, you can kind of just worm your way down. So that's how I made it up, and that's the way I was going to make it back down. But as I get to that slope, I literally think to myself, which I had never thought this the whole rest of the trip because I hadn't done a slope that was that kind of risky, or most of the slopes were everywhere I planned, I was on dirt. So like it's steep, but it's like rocky soil that I'm working my way through. So it's not like I'm going to like fall down that or things like that. But this is the only spot where I'm on actual like granite. And so I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, I should put my camera in my backpack, but I was so tired. I was just ready to be back home or back for the night. And so I'm like, it'll be okay. And so I have it in my cotton carrier harness, and I don't attach that safety tether to the camera. So cotton carriers do have a safety tether, and you could single strap it, you could double strap it in with that safety tether. In the event that the cotton carrier, the camera comes off the harness, then you have those safety tethers to catch it. I don't use those because I just hate straps. I am averse to straps. I never use straps in any scenario because I hate that they get in the way. So part of what I love about the cotton carrier harness is it works without the straps, and it works based on gravity. So according to gravity, as long as you aren't physically upside down, that thing cannot come out of that harness because it goes in, locks into place. So not only do you have a locking mechanism like that is reliant upon the camera twisting to be able to be pulled out, but you also have gravity literally weighing your camera and lens down. And so it's never been a problem for me before. But as I come down that slope, I started to slip a little bit, and I go, like, my upper body physically goes upside down just a little bit, like ever so slightly. So like if this is my upper body, it moves just a little bit too far upside down. Like I kind of fold into my legs and I catch myself. But as I do that, sure enough, the camera, because it relies on gravity in that harness, it rotates and flops out. And then I just see it go doing, doing, doing down the slope. And then it goes down that, hops down the big cliff, like the 20-foot drop at the end, and it just shatters on the bottom. It was so rough. It was really brutal. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it was my fault. Like, I don't blame. So first of all, cotton carrier has those safety tethers in there. I do not use those. They have them. So first of all, put that blame on me for not using those as well. So I don't blame cotton carrier for that. If I was using those, I'm pretty sure it would have turned out to be a completely different result. And also, I mean, it's to a certain extent, it's user error. And how often, I mean, I've been using cotton carrier for years now and never had a problem. How often are you going to find yourself physically upside down? I mean, that in my brain, at least, that's not the fault of the carrier when you know it relies on gravity. I didn't have the safety tethers in. I know it relies on gravity. If I go upside down, of course, the camera's going to go. So all that to say that the end of the day, it was, I would say it was my fault for it and not the harnesses. But with that being said, there was some other shocks about it too. So I got a question from Terrell I see in the chat about do I carry insurance on your equipment for things like this? I do, or at least theoretically I do. My camera body had just exited insurance. So unfortunately my camera body was old enough to where it had just exited my insurance window and it just was what it was. So that was a big bummer there. Definitely makes me wish I had a longer insurance on it. And then in regards to the lens I didn't have insured because it wasn't mine. It was sent to me by Sigma. So Sigma actually was the one who supplied me with the lens, which was why it was so amazing at the end. I was fully expecting to have to pay the cost of it from Sigma. I mean, that's in the contract that I signed with them when they loaned me gear. But they were really gracious and they said, hey, we understand accidents happen. We're glad that you're okay. Don't worry about it. And actually, to my amazement, so camera body is just done. It's completely done. It's very visible in the video. Like the actual mount literally cracked in half. Like it's kind of crazy that the mount cracked in half. Screen was obviously shattered. I mean, the cost to repair it, even if it was repairable, would be astronomical and not even worth it. Be more worth it just to buy a new one. But the lens, I actually thought the lens was okay when I went back down. I was like, by some miracle of God, I thought it was okay because the glass did not shatter at all in it. And I was like, whoa, this lens might actually be okay. I might have somehow avoided this. And I have my second shooter's camera as a backup just in case. And so I can use that. My second shooter will just use a phone or something to record. So I actually thought I had gotten away with it and I thought I was going to be okay. So when I come back down that mountain and I start talking with my second shooter, I show the camera because I know the camera's gone and I was bummed about that. But I actually thought in that moment that the lens was going to be okay. So I go to then, I have him record that real quick and then we cut the camera. I go take my lens, throw it onto the second shooter camera and I'm like, okay, it's working. And then I try to focus it. Nothing works with focus. I look at the aperture number 0.0. Aperture is not opening or closing whatsoever. So the electronics somehow in it got completely busted. And then I take a look at the lens and I look at it more closely and the barrel, one of the spots where it was actually separated and got bent. So at that moment I knew, okay, this lens is gone. And I thought because when I started to physically see the barrel bent and there was actually a separation and a gap in it, I thought the lens was truly toast. But sent it over to Sigma. My rep took a look at it. By this point, they hadn't even seen it. They already assumed it was gone. But I sent it back to them just in case they could repair it. They'd already forgiven me the cost. And yesterday, actually, I found out, this is like 2 months later now, but they gave me word that they actually were able to repair it, which was quite amazing. And I don't know if that's a testament to Sigma's like quality and durability of lenses, but I don't know how it could have possibly survived that drop, but somehow it did. The glass survived and they were able to repair the electronics by some miracle, and the lens is okay now. So so I thought that would be some fun news to share with you guys, since I just found that out yesterday. But yeah, so it was quite the experience and definitely learned my lesson from it. I think if I were to go back, I don't think I'm going to use safety tethers on my cotton carrier, just because that's the whole reason why I like cotton carriers, because I avoid using any sort of strap. Maybe I will. I don't know. Maybe I'll have it ready to just throw on in situations like that. But more importantly, I think like in a situation like that where I knew with my gut that this was not the right spot to be risking it, I didn't trust my gut. And I wanted to throw in my camera backpack in the moment, but I got too lazy. And that's where I paid the price. So, yeah. So I think that's the lesson I've learned from it. All right. Well, if there's any final questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. And if not, then we will call it a day. Thank you all for joining. Contacted Panasonic to ask for a replacement. Oh, that is something I'll mention real quick before we actually close out. So I am going through a big decision process with camera brands because I'll be honest. I mean, you guys saw my video last year if you saw my comprehensive Panasonic gear review for wildlife photography, I have not been super happy with Panasonic recently. I like them and I don't. I love certain aspects of them. I love them as a brand. I love their functionalities. I love certain things like their color space. I still think to this day they are the best bang for buck camera brand out there. Like, you can't beat the prices that they come in with the features that come with them and the quality that comes with it. However, they lack a flagship camera. And at this point in my career, my wildlife photography career and all that I do, I need to be able to have that level of flagship quality when I'm, doing workshops and working one-on-one with clients and all of that. And so all that to say that I've been waiting too long. They came out with the S1 II and the S1R2, and it's tough. It's a tough sell for me. It's almost there, but there are some specific things about it that make me not a huge fan of it. So I'm currently debating whether I'm going to stick with Panasonic and get the S1R2 or the S1 II, or if I'm going to just switch camera brands. So that'll be something that I'll be telling you guys more about in a separate video, probably in about 3-4 months from now, when I actually decide what I'm going to do and start making those purchases. But yeah, so I guess it's a good leading question there, Klaus. And next video, not going to be for a while now that I got my 2 baby boys, as you're aware. But probably will be a little bit of a minute before I wind up throwing another video out. We do have the competition coming up soon. So the Wilder Photo Competition will be going on starting August 16th. So just a little bit over a month from now. So definitely save that date in your calendars, and I'll be putting I've already been putting so much energy towards that. But that'll really be the next thing. And then hopefully we can get a video out sometime during that competition season. I do have one already filmed that was filmed before all my gear broke. I just need to get to editing it. So that's a pretty fun video too. But all right, well, thank you guys so much for joining. Any final questions? I'll give one last chance for that. And if not, we'll end it out. Again, Wilder Photo Competition coming August 16th. Oh, and one last thing. If you guys are interested, you guys can purchase prints from that snowcock video of the bighorn sheep or the mountain goat. You can purchase prints on my website. I didn't have those up when I launched the video, but now I do. So if anyone wanted them, just because I got 1 or 2 people asking about it earlier. So, all right. Any final questions? If not, appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much for joining me on this live stream. Thanks, Klaus. Thanks for the wishes. And I'm looking forward to next year getting to show you guys when, hopefully, fingers crossed, I actually get the photo. All right. Appreciate you guys. I will see you guys all on the next one.